The first thing I noticed that morning was the smell of fresh polish lingering in the garage, mingling with the faint scent of leather from the seats. My hands traced the contours of the car, every curve shining under the soft morning light. Months of labor had turned this relic into something almost alive again. Dad would have been proud. I hoped. I glanced out the window. Suburban quiet, a light breeze moving the trees, and for a fleeting second, I allowed myself to feel at peace. My phone buzzed, breaking the calm. A message from my aunt flickered on the screen. "Hannah, can you come see something? Urgent." A familiar pang twisted in my chest. Family. Urgent. Those two words together rarely meant good things for me. I pressed my lips together and let out a slow breath, smoothing the silk of my blouse against my arms, a futile gesture of composure. I had spent years building a life where I didn't need their approval, where my accomplishments were mine alone. But curiosity clawed at me. I couldn't help it. And as I slipped my hands from the steering wheel, feeling the cool metal beneath my fingers, I knew this wasn't just a casual visit. Something had shifted. Something was coming. I took one last look at the car, polished and gleaming, proof of every secret hour, every night spent under flickering lights and spilled oil. Whatever awaited me, I wouldn't let it shake what I'd built. Not today. I remember the first time I told Dad I wanted to work on his old car. I was 16, wearing ripped jeans and a hopeful grin, my hands already smudged with grease from a neighbor's bike. "Dad, I want to learn," I said, voice trembling with excitement. "I want to fix it up, make it like new." He looked at me, eyebrows drawn together, and for a moment, I saw something like doubt flicker in his eyes. Then Mom's voice cut through the silence from the kitchen. "Hannah, don't bother him. You'll just mess it up." Her words stung like cold metal against skin. I felt a lump rise in my throat, my hands shaking despite the heat in the garage. I wanted to argue, to shout that I could do it, that I could learn, but the dismissal hung in the air heavier than the scent of motor oil. I looked down at the tools, Dad's worn wrenches that had once fixed everything from engines to my scraped knees. That was when Grandma's advice whispered in my mind, from a memory years old. "The people who doubt you don't get to write your story. You do." That night, alone in my room, I traced her words on a scrap of paper, tucking it into my notebook. I made a decision then. If no one believed in me, I would prove it myself. I would take those lessons, those tools, and carve my own path, even if it meant doing it in secret, even if it meant falling countless times along the way. And so began my quiet rebellion. I spent weekends sneaking into the garage, learning the language of engines and chrome, each mistake a lesson, each small success a stolen victory. By the time Dad passed, I wasn't just his daughter. I was someone who could turn rust and memory into something alive. The car, that old piece of metal and memory, became my symbol. My first step toward independence, my declaration that I was capable, that I would never be dismissed again. The months that followed were a blur of late nights, engine grease under my nails, and the hum of tools echoing through the empty garage. Every time I thought I'd reached my limit, when a stubborn part refused to budge, when the paint smeared after hours of careful work, I reminded myself why I was doing this. Not for anyone else, not for approval, not for recognition, but for me, for the memory of Dad, and for the girl who had been told she couldn't. It wasn't easy. I didn't have formal training. I learned from old manuals, YouTube videos, and trial and error. There were nights when I wanted to quit, when the car seemed more like a curse than a gift. But then there was Mr. Daniels, the retired mechanic from down the street, who saw me struggling and offered quiet guidance. He didn't treat me like a girl who didn't belong. He treated me like someone capable of mastery. "Your hands know what they want," he said one evening, wiping his own grease-stained palms. "Trust them." And I did. Step by step, I restored the car. First, the engine roared to life, an intoxicating sound that made months of effort feel like seconds. Then came the bodywork, sanding, polishing, coaxing the faded paint into a reflection of its former glory. Each success was a private victory, a reminder that I was building something that no one could take away. During those months, I learned more than car mechanics. I learned resilience, patience, and the subtle art of quiet pride. I found ways to keep my achievements hidden from my family, short posts on social media, vague updates that hinted at progress without revealing the depth of my labor. It was my sanctuary, my secret triumph, a world where I was the author, the mechanic, the dreamer. By the time I finished, the car gleamed like it had been born yesterday, every detail reflecting hours of careful devotion. But even more than the car, I had transformed. I wasn't the uncertain girl dismissed by my family. I was a woman who had taken what she loved, nurtured it, and turned it into proof of her strength. And no one had seen a thing until now. The knock on the garage door made my heart skip a beat, though not with fear. Curiosity, maybe, or the thrill of a secret about to be revealed. I opened it to find my Aunt Caroline and my cousins standing there, hesitant, polite smiles plastered over the expectation of disappointment. "Well, Hannah," Caroline began, her eyes flicking over the garage, "we, thought we'd come check on you." I stepped aside, letting them in, and watched their expressions shift as their gaze fell on the car. Chrome gleamed like a mirror. The paint sparkled under the morning sun. The leather seats gleamed, polished to perfection, and even the tires looked brand new. Every tool on the workbench was in its place, every shelf organized with meticulous care. They were quiet, too quiet. "You did all this by yourself?" my cousin whispered, awe edging his voice. I smiled, letting the moment stretch, letting them take it all in, the hours of sweat, the nights of doubt, the mornings spent learning the language of engines, the countless failures that had led to this perfection. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady but warm. "Every bolt, every brushstroke, every detail. This car, it's more than a project. It's my life, my independence, my proof that I can do what I set my mind to." Caroline's eyes widened, guilt and disbelief mingling. We didn't know. We thought you were struggling." I shook my head gently. "That's the problem. You assumed. You dismissed me. But I didn't need you to believe in me. I had myself, and I trusted that was enough." The silence hung between us, heavy with realization. They looked at me, not the unsure teenager they remembered, but a woman who had taken grief, frustration, and doubt and transformed it into something extraordinary. I saw admiration, shock, a hint of shame, but mostly, I saw the truth. I had become everything they hadn't expected, and in that moment, I held the power of my story in my hands. And the car? The car wasn't just metal and paint. It was my voice, my history, my triumph, gleaming under the sun for everyone to see. I watched them carefully, the weight of their gaze on me both heavy and fascinating. For so long, I had been the one expected to bend, to apologize, to shrink. Not anymore. "Let me be clear," I began, my voice calm but unwavering. "I've spent years building myself, learning, creating something I'm proud of. If we're going to have a relationship now, it has to be on terms that respect that. That respect me as I am today, not the girl you assumed I was." Caroline shifted uncomfortably. "Hannah, we didn't realize." "I understand," I said, softening slightly. "But understanding is not enough. There are conditions. Simple ones, really." I gestured toward the car. "First, recognize what's been accomplished here. Not as a favor, not as a hobby, but as hard work and talent. You don't have to like it, but you must respect it." Next, I address my cousins. "Second, each of you has your own dreams. Pursue them. Stop letting fear or doubt hold you back. And no dismissive comments, ever, towards someone chasing their passion." Caroline's lips pressed together, but I continued. "Finally, honesty and accountability. I won't tolerate assumptions or old patterns. If you want a place in my life, you show up fully, you contribute, and you support each other without judgment." I paused, letting it sink in. This was not revenge, it was empowerment. Compassion tempered with firmness. I could care, but I would not bend. My boundaries were clear, my expectations defined. There was a moment of silence, heavy with realization. They were processing the shift, The girl they had underestimated was gone. In her place stood someone unshakable, someone who had turned grief and doubt into mastery, someone who was finally in control. And in that control, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known before. The power wasn't about proving them wrong, it was about claiming my space, my voice, my life. And I would not relinquish it for anyone. A few weeks passed, and the tension that once hung between us began to fade. Aunt Caroline stopped by again, this time without judgment, only curiosity. My cousins asked questions, real ones, about the process, about the patience it took to bring something broken back to life. I didn't expect them to change overnight. But I saw the effort, the kind that grows slowly, like trust rebuilt brick by brick. One evening, my cousin even handed me a small gift, a pair of gloves, embroidered with my initials. For your next project, he'd said, a shy smile tugging at his lips. Standing in the garage that night, I looked at the car. Dad's car, now mine in every possible way. I could still hear his voice in my memory, calm and warm. Take care of her, hon. She's got history. And she did. But so did I. I opened the glove compartment and found the old note Grandma had written years ago, the one I'd carried like a secret promise. The people who doubt you don't get to write your story. You do. For a moment, I let the paper rest against my heart. I wasn't the girl who sought permission anymore. I was the woman who had rebuilt her father's legacy with her own hands, who had turned pain into purpose and silence into strength. I climbed into the driver's seat, the leather soft beneath me, the air humming with quiet satisfaction. As I turned the key, the engine roared to life, a steady, confident sound that mirrored my own heartbeat. The world outside the windshield glowed with fading sunlight, a horizon wide open and waiting. And in that moment, I whispered to myself, softly, almost like a vow, this time, I drive my own story.